You know what's interesting? We can remember an embarrassing moment from 15 years ago in perfect detail, the words, the faces, the exact feeling. But we forget what we had for lunch 3 days ago.
The brain saves completely the wrong files. Hey everyone, I'm Michelle. Welcome back to Daily English Listening Podcast. So glad you're here with us today.
And I'm Chris. Today we're getting into something that most of us carry around without realizing how heavy it actually is, the past, and more specifically, what it really means to let it go.
Just let this conversation sit with you. You don't have to do anything with it right now. Just listen and let it land wherever it needs to.
Yeah, sometimes the right words at the right moment shift something quietly without you even noticing.
So let's start with something I think a lot of people feel but rarely say out loud. There's this assumption that letting go of the past means forgetting it completely, like deleting a file so it no longer exists.
And that sounds impossible, because it is impossible.
Right, and I think that's exactly why so many people feel stuck around this. They tell themselves, I can't let go because I can't forget.
But forgetting and letting go are not the same thing.
Not even close. Letting go of the past isn't about erasing a memory. It's about removing the emotional weight attached to it. The memory stays, but the sting, the charge, the pain, that's what you release.
So the event is still there in your mind, but it stops arriving with all that feeling every single time.
Exactly. You can remember something clearly without being haunted by it.
And when something haunts you, it keeps showing up uninvited with the same emotional force, like it just happened.
She was still haunted by that conversation years later. The memory isn't neutral. It arrives loaded, with regrets, with pain, with all the feelings still intact.
And most of us have at least one of those replaying somewhere in the background.
More than one, honestly, if we're being real.
So what's actually happening when we feel that way about something from the past?
A big part of it is that memory exaggerates. It takes a moment that maybe lasted 5 minutes and turns it into something that feels enormous and permanent and defining.
The brain is a terrible editor.
The absolute worst. It keeps the most dramatic scenes and cuts all the context around them.
You remember the argument, but not what led to it or how it eventually resolved.
You remember the failure, but not everything you learned from it or how much you grew afterward.
And then you walk around carrying this distorted version of events like it's the objective truth.
When something is distorted, it means it's been twisted from its real form, usually by emotion or by time. His memory of that whole period was distorted. It felt far worse than it probably was.
It's not a deliberate lie you tell yourself. It's just an incomplete picture that got stretched.
And the real problem is that we make actual present-day decisions based on that distorted version.
We avoid certain things. We hold ourselves back. We stay smaller than we need to because of something that maybe wasn't even as catastrophic as we remember it being.
That's one of the quietest ways the past controls the present, without announcing itself.
It just shapes how you react, what you avoid, who you trust, what you believe you're capable of.
Okay, before we go further, I want to ask everyone listening something because I think this rarely gets said out loud. Is there something from your past that you know, rationally, is completely over, but emotionally it still has a grip on you? Drop it in the comments, just a yes or no, because I think a lot of people would feel genuinely less alone knowing others carry that same thing.
Please do, and be honest. You might be surprised how many people respond with the same answer.
Because we all have something sitting there, everyone.
And I think the first real step towards letting go is admitting, honestly, without judgment, that you are still holding on.
Which sounds obvious, but is genuinely harder than it seems.
Because holding on disguises itself so well. It looks like staying constantly busy. It looks like avoiding certain topics in conversation. It looks like tensing up when certain names come up.
Or the opposite, bringing those names up constantly without realizing you're doing it. That one too. When something keeps finding its way into every conversation, that's also holding on, even if it doesn't feel like it.
So what does letting go actually look like in practice? Because just let it go has to be the least useful advice any human being has ever given another human being.
It really is. Like, oh, just let it go. Thank you. Problem solved.
Mind-blowing guidance.
The way I actually think about it, letting go is less about making a single decision and more about a gradual shift in how you see something.
A shift, not a switch. It doesn't happen all at once, and it doesn't happen on command.
Right. You don't wake up one morning and decide the past no longer affects you, but over time, with intention, you can start to see it differently, with less intensity, with more distance, with less of that emotional charge.
Like moving from being inside something to eventually being able to look at it through a window.
That's exactly it. And one of the things that helps that shift happen is what I describe as reframing.
Changing the frame around something to change how you see it without changing what actually happened.
The event itself doesn't change, but the meaning you decide to give it can. I didn't fail, I got real information about what doesn't work for me. That's a reframe. Same situation, different interpretation.
And it's not about being fake positive or pretending something didn't hurt when it did.
Not at all. It's actually about being more accurate, because the harshest interpretation of what happened isn't always the most truthful one.
We just assume it is because it's the loudest voice in the room.
The loudest version wins by default if you never stop to question it.
I want to bring in something real here, because I think abstract ideas only go so far before you need a story to make them land. I had a friend, Marcus, who didn't get a promotion at work about 4 years ago.
Someone with genuinely less experience got the role instead. That stings in a very specific way.
A very specific way. And Marcus took it personally for a long time, felt like a direct judgment on his ability, his value, everything he'd put into that job.
Which is such a completely human response to that situation.
Completely. But about 2 years later, that entire department went through a major round of layoffs. Almost everyone in that team lost their position.
And Marcus?
Had already moved to a completely different company by then. Better role, better pay, better culture, because not getting that promotion had forced him to look elsewhere and find something far better.
So the thing that felt like a rejection at the time turned out to be a redirection.
He didn't see it that way when it happened, but now when he talks about it, there's genuinely no bitterness left. Just, that was probably the best thing that could have happened to me.
And that's exactly what outgrowing the past looks like.
Outgrowing? Like you literally grow past it?
You become someone for whom it no longer defines anything. She didn't forget those difficult years. She outgrew them. There's no anger in that word, no resentment, just distance and growth and forward movement.
That reframes what letting go means entirely. It's not weakness, it's not pretending.
It's actually one of the strongest things a person can do, to release something instead of holding it as permanent proof of something about yourself.
And why do we hold it as proof anyway?
Sometimes we hold on to pain as proof that something mattered. Like, if I release this, it means it didn't count. It means that chapter of my life meant nothing.
That might be the most honest thing I've heard said about this whole subject.
But things can matter deeply, people, experiences, relationships, losses, and still be released.
Letting go doesn't cancel what happened. It just stops what happened from running the show going forward.
From being the filter that every new experience gets passed through before you can feel it clearly.
And once that filter starts to lift, even just a little, something changes in how you move through the world.
The noise drops, and in that quieter space, you can actually hear what's happening right now instead of everything being colored by what happened back then.
Which is huge, because so much conflict in relationships, at work, even with yourself, comes from responding to what something reminds you of, rather than what's actually in front of you.
You are fighting a version of the past that nobody else in the room can see.
And the other person has no idea why the reaction is so intense.
Because for them, it was a small moment.
For you, it carried the weight of everything that came before it.
That's exhausting to live with.
It really is. And I think recognizing that pattern, wait, am I reacting to this or to something from before? That awareness alone starts to create space.
The awareness is the beginning of the shift.
Always. You can't change a pattern you haven't noticed yet.
Okay, here's the wild card I want to throw into this conversation because I think it genuinely surprises people when they hear it.
Go ahead.
Sometimes the past is actually worth revisiting, not to suffer through it again, but to genuinely understand it.
That's a distinction a lot of people miss. There's a real difference between being haunted by the past and being informed by it. One is involuntary. It just happens to you. You didn't send an invitation. The other is intentional. You choose to look at something clearly, take what's useful from it, and then actually move on.
When something is involuntary, it means it happens without your choice or control. The memories came back involuntarily. You didn't call them up, they just arrived on their own schedule.
And that's the version that drains you, because you're not learning anything. You're just reliving.
But when you choose to look at something consciously, when you ask what it taught you, what it changed in you, what you do differently with what you know now, that's a completely different relationship with the same memory.
That's using the past as information instead of being used by it as punishment. And I think that's where real peace with something actually comes from. Not from avoiding the memory, from changing the relationship you have with it.
Until eventually the memory becomes neutral.
Neutral, no longer charged. Not painful, not joyful, just a fact that exists.
Looking back at that chapter of my life feels neutral now. It happened, it shaped me, I carry what was useful, and that's it. Neutral is actually a really peaceful place to land with something that once felt enormous.
Better than bitter, better than still raw every time it surfaces.
So much better. And you get there not by forcing it or willing it away, but by giving it time, by choosing perspective over and over, and honestly, by deciding that carrying it costs you more than releasing it ever could.
What is holding this costing me? That's the question.
Energy you could be putting somewhere else. Attention that could be here, now, in this conversation, in this day.
Present moments you're not fully in because part of you is stuck somewhere back there.
You travel so much lighter when you decide to let go. That's really what it comes down to at the end of all of this.
And lighter doesn't mean empty. I think people worry about that.
Like, if I let this go, what's left? Will I lose part of myself?
Will I lose the story that explains who I am?
But lighter means free. Free to be more present, more open to what's here now, more fully yourself without all that noise running underneath everything.
And that freedom, that mental space, changes how you show up in every area of your life.
The decisions you make, the relationships you build, the way you talk to yourself on a hard day.
Because you're not dragging something heavy into every new situation and hoping nobody notices.
You walk in without the weight, and people feel that difference in you, even when they can't name exactly what changed.
There's something genuinely liberating about that moment.
Liberating means it gives you freedom. It releases you from something that was holding you back or keeping you confined. The conversation was liberating. Letting go of that belief was the most liberating thing she ever did.
It's a strong word, but some feelings earn it.
And this one earns it. Because deciding to stop letting the past define your present, that's not a small thing.
It's one of the bigger moves a person can make, quietly, without any announcement, without anyone else even knowing it happened.
It rarely happens in one dramatic moment either.
It's 100 small ones. A thought you notice and choose not to follow. A story you decide not to retell for the 100th time.
A moment where something that used to sting just doesn't, quite as much as it did before.
And then one day you realize the grip is gone. Not all at once, just gone.
Not because you forgot, because you outgrew it.
That's the whole message sitting at the center of this conversation. You don't forget the past. You outgrow it.
And outgrowing it is something available to everyone. It doesn't require a perfect process or the right therapist or the ideal circumstances.
It requires honesty and a decision, even a small one, to start moving.
To stop giving that thing so much of your present.
Because your present is where your life is actually happening.
Right now, not back there.
And the people who figure that out, they don't walk around lighter because nothing ever hurt them.
They walk around lighter because they decided the weight wasn't worth carrying anymore.
That's a choice, and it's available today.
Whenever you're ready. There's no deadline on this one.
No deadline, just whenever you're ready.
I think a lot of people needed to hear that today.
All right, let's spend some real time now with the words and ideas that came up in this conversation, because several of them deserve a closer look before we go.
Starting with haunted, and this word carries serious emotional weight in English, way beyond ghost stories and Halloween. When you say something haunts you, you're saying it keeps returning to your mind with force, with feeling, without being invited. He was haunted by the words he never said. She was haunted by that decision for years afterwards. It's not just remembering something, it's being followed by it, being found by it when you weren't looking for it.
And the reason it's worth knowing this word well is that native speakers use it constantly to describe emotional experience. That image haunted me. The memory haunted her for a long time. Once you hear it used this way a few times, it starts to feel completely natural.
The opposite of being haunted, the destination, if you want to call it that, is reaching what we called neutral. Something being emotionally neutral means the charge is completely gone. It's not painful anymore, but it's not something you need to celebrate either. It just exists as a fact. When I think about that relationship now, it feels neutral, like reading about something that happened to someone else a long time ago.
Neutral is actually an underrated place to aim for. People often think the goal is to feel positive about difficult things, but neutral is enough. Neutral means it no longer costs you anything.
Then there's reframing, which is one of the most practical concepts in this whole conversation, and one you'll hear a lot in modern American English, especially in conversations about mindset and personal growth. To reframe something means to consciously choose a different interpretation of it, not a dishonest one, not a forced positive spin, but a more complete and accurate way of seeing what happened. She reframed the rejection as redirection. He reframed the failure as information. The situation doesn't change, your relationship to it does.
And reframing only works when it's honest. If you're trying to convince yourself of something that deep down you don't believe, it won't stick. But when the reframe is actually more accurate than the original story you were telling yourself, that's when it changes something real.
Connected to that is distorted, which describes what's happening before the reframe is possible. When a memory or a perception has been twisted from its original form by emotion or time, it's distorted. My memory of that whole period was distorted. I only held on to the hardest moments and forgot everything around them. Distorted doesn't mean you're lying to yourself intentionally. It means the picture is incomplete or exaggerated in one direction.
And most painful memories are distorted in some way. The brain focuses on the sharpest emotional moment and loses the context. That's not a character flaw, it's just how memory works.
Then outgrowing, which might honestly be the most important word from this entire episode. You outgrow something when you develop past it, when it no longer fits who you are now. I outgrew the need for their approval. She outgrew that version of herself and everything that came with it. There's no bitterness in the word, no drama, just the quiet recognition that you've moved forward and the old thing no longer has the same claim on you.
Outgrowing is different from forgetting and different from forgiving, actually. You can outgrow something without fully understanding it. You just become someone for whom it no longer defines anything important.
Involuntary is another one worth carrying. When something is involuntary, it happens without your conscious choice or control. The memories came back involuntarily. You didn't invite them, they arrived on their own. And recognizing that some of what haunts you is involuntary, not a weakness, not a choice you're making, is actually really freeing. You're not broken for being affected by difficult things. You're human. The work is in moving from involuntary to intentional, from the past happening to you deciding what you do with it.
And the word that describes the process of getting there, that gradual movement in perspective, is shift. A shift is not sudden and it's not dramatic. It's slow and it's quiet.
and it accumulates over time. Over the years, there was a shift in how she felt about that chapter of her life. You won't always notice it happening, but one day you look back and realize something is different.
And when the shift is complete, when you've done the work and given it the time, you arrive somewhere liberating. Liberating means it sets you free. It removes something that was holding you in place, keeping you from moving the way you want to move. Letting go of that story was the most liberating thing I ever did. It's a strong word, and it's used that way on purpose, because some experiences of freedom genuinely deserve a strong word.
These aren't just vocabulary words. They're the language of people who've actually done this work and found a way to talk about it.
And having the words makes it easier to recognize what's happening when you're in the middle of it.
Which is the whole point, right? Not just to understand English, but to have the language for your own life.
That's it exactly. And speaking of living your life more fully, if today's conversation got you thinking about what you actually want your life to look like going forward, there's an episode right below this one that connects directly to this.
We talked about dreams, whether you're actually living yours, and what quietly gets in the way. It picks up exactly where this one leaves off.